Most people think retirement is when life finally starts to open up. Less stress, more freedom, you just breathe. But that's not what always happens. Sometimes the real trouble starts after the pressure's gone. Like it starts on some random Tuesday morning. Coffee's poured, house is quiet, nobody needs you anywhere. And somewhere in that silence, you realize relief isn't the same thing as purpose. Maybe the goal was never to stop working. Maybe it was to just stop doing work that felt completely dead inside. And that's honestly why David Attenborough matters here. Because this is a guy who could have retired decades ago. And he once said the thing that he dreads most is not working. He just turned 100. He's narrated some of the most watched television in history. More awards than most people have shelf space for. Nothing left to prove, nothing left to earn, and he still hasn't retired. Not because he has to, because he doesn't want to stop working. And I think buried inside of that is a question that most people don't ask until retirement actually happens to them. What if the problem was never work itself? What if the real problem was spending your life doing work that emptied you out, instead of work that made you feel alive? So Attenborough said it pretty plainly. He dreads not working, not slowing down, not doing less, the actual stopping. And when you hear that, it's easy to just wave it off, right? I mean, he's famous. He loves what he does. Of course he kept going. And yeah, that's the simple answer. But I think the simple answer might be wrong. Because if you strip away all of it, the fame, the documentaries, the knighthood, what you're left with is just a person who found something worth continuing. Something that still needed him. Something that gave his days a shape that they wouldn't have had otherwise. And the uncomfortable question is whether most people ever actually find that, before they retire or after. So here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Work was never just a paycheck. It just wasn't. For most people, work was doing something invisible the whole time, quietly running in the background. It was giving you a reason to get up, a place to be. People expected something from you. A version of yourself that had things to do and problems to solve and deadlines that actually mattered. You probably didn't think about it that way when you were living it. You were too busy being tired, being frustrated, watching the clock, waiting for Friday. I get it. But underneath all that, work was providing something that had nothing to do with money. Structure, identity, that quiet sense that your presence on any given day actually mattered to someone. Most people never notice that's happening until it stops. And here's where it gets interesting. Because we treat the loss of a job like a logistical problem. Like you just need to fill the calendar back up. Hobbies, travel, grandkids, just keep busy. But busy isn't the same as needed. And somewhere deep down, you know the difference. Now, I want to tell you about a guy that I'll call Gary. Gary retired at 63. He'd done everything right. Saved well, planned carefully, hit his number, and he walked away from a management job that he held for 19 years. His wife threw him a party. His kids flew in. Everyone told him he'd earned it. And honestly, the first few weeks felt exactly like he'd imagined. No alarm, no commute, no meetings. He slept in, he worked in the yard, watched some baseball. His shoulders dropped, his breathing slowed. This was it. But somewhere around month 3, something started shifting. It didn't announce itself. Gary described it later as kind of a fog. Not depression exactly, not sadness, just flatness. The days started blurring together. He had all the time that he ever wanted, and somehow time felt heavier than ever before. He told me that the thing that got him the most was realizing that nobody needed his input anymore. Nobody expected him anywhere. Nothing important happened if he just did nothing today. And for a man who spent nearly 2 decades being the person that people came to with problems, that silence was a lot louder than he expected. That's not a money problem. That's an identity problem. But there's a second layer that Gary didn't talk about right away. Because the fog wasn't just about feeling useless. It was about something more uncomfortable than that. It was the first time in his adult life that he had to answer a question that work had always answered for him automatically. Who am I when nobody needs me? Most people never have to deal with that question. Work answers it every morning before they're even fully awake. And then one day, it doesn't. Most people plan their retirement finances in incredible detail. They know their withdrawal rate, they know their social security strategy, they've got a budget, a spreadsheet, they've thought it through. Almost nobody plans with that same detail for what replaces usefulness. Not hobbies, not travel, usefulness. That feeling that something in the world is different because you showed up today. And here's what gets me. The financial planning industry is enormous. There are entire professions built around making sure that you don't run out of money. But there's almost no infrastructure, no cultural conversation, no planning framework for making sure that you don't run out of purpose. So people walk into retirement with a perfect financial plan and a completely blank page where the other half of their life used to be. But here's the part that we don't say out loud. The culture kind of tells you, well, that's fine. Enjoy it. You earned it. Rest. And there's something almost cruel about that message because it hands people permission to slowly disappear, dressed up as reward. Put Gary next to Attenborough. Two guys, one still moving towards something, one slowly losing shape inside of a life that checked every single box. The difference between them isn't discipline or fame or luck. It's that one of them still had something waiting on the other side that needed him there. And here's a line that I keep coming back to. Maybe the problem was never work. Maybe the problem was meaningless work. Because those are two completely different things. And we spend our whole careers treating them like they're the same. Meaningless work drains you, takes your time, gives you nothing back but a paycheck. Of course you want out of that. Every instinct you have is telling you to escape. And honestly, those instincts are right. But meaningful work, that does something different. It runs the other direction. It pulls you forward, gives the day a reason, makes you feel like a participant in something rather than just a passenger. See, Attenborough, he never retired because he never had to escape his work. He wasn't running from it, wasn't counting down to freedom from it. He was doing something that still felt worth doing at 90, at 95, even at 100. And the question that should be a little uncomfortable, how many people actually get to say that? But there's another layer to this that almost nobody talks about. A lot of people who do love their work, they still retire anyway. Not because they want to stop, but because they feel like they're supposed to. Like if you work past 65 and you don't have to financially, there's something slightly embarrassing about it. Like you can't let go. Like you didn't earn your rest. We've built an entire cultural story around retirement as the finish line. And sometimes that story pressures people off the track before they're actually ready to stop running. But in reality, there's another path entirely. There's a version of retirement that works beautifully, where the person steps back from work and steps into something else that matters. A project, a community, something creative, something with stakes, something that needs them, something that gives Tuesday morning a shape. And then there's the other version, which is more common than anyone admits. That's the version where the person escapes the job and lands in a life that's comfortable and quiet and slowly, almost without them noticing, smaller. Where the days are fine, but the years start to look identical. Where freedom turned out to mean nobody's expecting anything from you anymore. And here's what that does over time. It's not just that the world stops needing you, it's that you start to stop needing yourself to show up. That internal voice that used to say, someone's counting on me, that voice gets quieter and quieter until one day you realize that you've been letting your entire weeks pass without once feeling like your presence made a difference. Not because you're lazy, not because you failed, but because nothing in your life is structured to require anything from you anymore. And this is the part that really bothers me, you start to wonder if you've been waiting for something without knowing what it is. Just this vague, low-grade sense that the most interesting version of your life has already happened. That you're in the epilogue now. And, well, the story's basically done. That's not retirement. That's a slow kind of grief. And most people, they never figure that out. I don't think that the lesson here is that nobody should retire. That's not what I'm saying. The lesson is that Attenborough kept the part that most people accidentally leave behind. He kept the mission, the usefulness, that feeling of moving forward, something bigger than his own comfort. And the work, even at 100, gives him what a lot of retirement plans quietly take away. Think about Gary one more time. He eventually found his way out of that fog. Took him about a year. And it happened when he started volunteering with the youth mentorship program. Not because someone told him to. Because a kid showed up one Tuesday morning who needed exactly what Gary had spent 19 years learning how to do. And for the first time since he retired, something important happened because he showed up. And that's kind of the whole thing right there. The question isn't when you should stop. The question is what you're going to keep. Because if you retire and there's something waiting on the other side that still needs you, something that pulls you forward, something that makes Tuesday feel like it matters, you're not losing anything. You're just redirecting. But if the plan is only to stop and the only thing waiting is the absence of pressure, that's where people start quietly disappearing into their own lives. Not dramatically, not all at once, just slowly. A little less engaged, a little less necessary, a little less present in their own story. And nobody around them will call it a problem. Because from the outside, it still looks like the dream. If you know someone who's retired or getting close, and you think this might mean something to them, share this video. Sometimes the most useful thing that you can do for somebody is hand them a conversation that they didn't know that they needed. Before you go, I have to mention something that I didn't really get into today because it's super important. And maybe it's the most specific way that this plays out in real life. When retirement creates the empty space, no structure, no place to be, no one expecting anything, well, something has to fill it. That's just how we work. And for a lot of people, what fills it is cable news. Not because they're angry people, not because they're always political, but because cable news is engineered to do exactly what work used to do. It gives you a schedule, a cast of characters, stakes, something that feels urgent, a reason to sit down at a specific time and pay attention. The problem is what it does to you over time. And I think it's one of the least talked about ways that retirement quietly goes wrong. I made another video about this and what it gets into about structure, identity, and what we let fill the spaces in our lives. Trust me, it's worth your time. I'll leave a link down below. And remember, retirement isn't just a math problem. Thanks for watching, my friends. I'll see you in the next one.